Admiral Keth, 9 of the Vorthak Armada, stretched his 4 arms in satisfaction as he watched the blue marble called Earth spin helplessly below his flagship. The planet looked so ordinary, so unremarkable. Hard to believe these bipedal creatures had managed to destroy 3 of his scout fleets before he'd arrived with the full force of the Vorthak war machine. "Admiral," chirped his communications officer, Lieutenant Zara 4, her voice carrying that delicious note of anticipation that always preceded a good planetary conquest. "The humans are attempting to establish contact." Keth 9's mandibles clicked in amusement. "Oh, how precious. Put them through, Lieutenant. Let's hear what these little meatbags have to say before we turn their world into space dust." The holographic display flickered to life, revealing a human female with short brown hair and tired eyes. She wore what appeared to be a military uniform, though Keth 9 had to suppress a laugh at how primitive their clothing looked compared to Vorthak bio-armor. "This is General Maya Torres of Earth Defense Command," the human said, her voice steady, despite the obvious fear Keth 9 could smell through the biosensors. "We're prepared to negotiate terms for—" "Negotiate?" Keth 9's laughter echoed through the bridge, a sound like grinding metal that made several junior officers flinch. "Oh, that's rich. You think you're in a position to negotiate, little human?" General Torres's expression didn't change. "Interesting. Most species started begging by now." "We've reviewed your previous encounters with our outer colonies," she continued. "We know what you're capable of. But Admiral, with respect, you haven't seen what we're capable of, haven't I?" Keth 9 leaned forward, his black eyes gleaming with predatory delight. "Your outer settlements fell in less than 6 hours each. Your so-called defense satellites were nothing more than expensive fireworks. And that pathetic fleet you sent to Proxima Centauri? My, the youngest nephew could have handled that with a training vessel." The human's lips curved slightly upward. Was she smiling? "Those weren't our real defenses, Admiral. Those were the ones we wanted you to see." Keth 9's amusement faltered for just a moment. Something in her tone? "No, impossible." His intelligence reports were thorough. Humans were a Class 3 civilization at best. Primitive fusion drives, crude kinetic weapons, barely functional artificial intelligence. They'd been monitoring human transmissions for decades. These creatures spent more time fighting each other than developing any real military technology. "Your psychological warfare is admirable, General, but ultimately pointless," Keth 9 said, gesturing to his tactical officer. "Commander Thex 7, show our human friend what a real military looks like." The display split, showing Earth's surface alongside a tactical readout of the Vorthak fleet. 800 warships, each one capable of glassing a continent. Troop carriers holding 2 million battle-hardened soldiers. Orbital bombardment platforms that could crack a planet's crust. "Impressive," General Torres said, and she actually sounded like she meant it. 800 ships. That's... what? About 30% more than you brought to the Altarian system? Keth 9's mandibles stopped clicking. How did she know about Altaria? 40% more than the force that conquered the hegemony, she continued conversationally. Though I notice you're running the same tactical formation. Very traditional. "Enough games," Keth 9 snarled. "You will surrender now, or we will demonstrate why the Vorthak Armada is feared across 17 systems." "Oh, we know why you're feared, Admiral." The human's smile widened. "The question is, do you know why we're not?" Before Keth 9 could respond, his sensor officer's voice cut across the bridge. "Admiral, we have multiple contacts. Ships decloaking off our starboard flank." The tactical display erupted in 12 red warning lights. 12 vessels had appeared from nowhere. Sleek and angular in design, they looked almost organic, like someone had taken a shark and taught it to swim through space. "Human stealth technology," Keth 9 muttered, then louder. "All ships, combat formation. Prepare for, Admiral? His weapons officer interrupted, his voice tight with confusion. These ships, they're not showing up on any of our classification databases. The energy signatures are unusual. General Torres was still smiling. Admiral, I'd like you to meet Captain Elena Vasquez of the ESV Wraith. She's been looking forward to this conversation. The holographic display split again, and a new human appeared. This one was younger, with dark hair pulled back in a severe bun, and eyes that reminded Keth 9 uncomfortably of deep space. Empty, cold, predatory. Admiral Keth 9, Captain Vasquez said, her voice carrying an odd accent that Keth 9's translators couldn't quite place. Welcome to our solar system. I hope you'll forgive the lack of a proper welcoming committee. We've been a bit busy preparing your reception. More ships decloaking, his sensor officer called out. Port side, dorsal aspect, ventral. Admiral, they're everywhere. 60, 80, over 100 contacts. Keth 9's confidence began to crack like ice under pressure. Impossible. Our long-range scans showed no significant human fleet presence. That's because you weren't looking in the right places, Captain Vasquez replied. Tell me, Admiral, what do you know about human evolution? What kind of question was that? Your species evolved from primitive primates on a death world with excessive gravity and hostile environmental conditions. Standard pattern for aggressive bipedal species. Exactly. A death world. The captain's smile was nothing like General Torres's diplomatic expression. This was the smile of something that had learned to hunt in the dark. Do you know what makes a death world, Admiral? It's not just the big predators. It's the small ones. The ones that hide. The ones that wait. The ones that strike when you least expect it. The tactical display was now a constellation of red dots surrounding Keth 9's fleet. Somehow, impossibly, the humans had managed to position over 200 ships without being detected. You see, Admiral, General Torres said, taking over the conversation with practiced ease, you made the same mistake that every predator species makes when they come to Earth. You assumed that because we're not the biggest or the strongest, we must be prey. But humans aren't just another prey species, Captain Vasquez added. We're persistence predators. We're the things that hunted the mammoths to extinction not by being stronger or faster, but by being smarter, more patient, more creative. Keth 9's hands moved to his command console. All ships, target those human vessels, and I wouldn't do that if I were you, the captain said softly. You see, while you were busy scanning our outer colonies and cataloging our primitive technology, we were scanning you, learning your weaknesses, studying your tactics, preparing. Preparing what? Keth 9 demanded. Well, for starters, we noticed that Vorthak warships have a fascinating vulnerability in their power distribution systems. Something about the way your biotechnology interfaces with your quantum cores creates a specific harmonic frequency that can be exploited. Keth 9's blood ran cold. That information was classified at the highest levels of Vorthak command. It had taken their own engineers decades to discover that flaw, and even longer to develop countermeasures that only their newest ships possessed. Impossible. You couldn't have discovered that weakness without years of study and detailed technical specifications that Keth 9 stopped. The Altarian survivors. You found them. We found them, General Torres confirmed. Along with the survivors from 6 other worlds, you've conquered. Funny thing about genocide, Admiral, there are almost always survivors. And survivors talk. They told us all about your standard tactics, Captain Vasquez said. Overwhelming force, orbital bombardment, psychological warfare, very effective against most species. But then again, most species never had to deal with apex persistence predators. Keth 9's tactical officer spoke up, his voice strained. Admiral, the human ships. They're not just surrounding us, they're moving in perfect coordination. It's like they're operating as a single organism. Hive mind? Keth, 9, asked hopefully. Hive minds were predictable. You could disrupt them with the right frequency modulations. Not exactly, General Torres said. More like a pack. You see, Admiral, while your species was busy conquering and dominating, ours was learning to cooperate, to think collectively, while maintaining individual creativity. It's what allowed us to survive on our death world. It's what allowed us to reach the stars. And it's what's going to allow us to send you home with a message, Captain Vasquez added. A message? Keth 9's voice was barely a whisper. That Earth is no longer prey, General Torres said. That humanity has graduated to a different category entirely. The tactical display shifted, showing detailed schematics of Vorthak ship designs, complete with technical specifications and vulnerability analyses. Information that should have been impossible for humans to obtain. We know about your shield harmonics, Captain Vasquez said conversationally. We know about your weapon charging cycles. We know about your communication protocols, your chain of command, even your emergency evacuation procedures. But most importantly, General Torres added, we know about your fear. Keth 9's mandibles clicked nervously. Vorthak warriors know no fear. Everyone knows fear, Admiral. The difference is what you do with it. The general's expression grew serious. The species uses fear as a weapon against others. Ours learned to use it as fuel. Fear of the dark taught us to make fire, Captain Vasquez said. Fear of predators taught us to make tools. Fear of death taught us to make medicine. Fear of being alone in the universe taught us to reach for the stars. And fear of bullies, General Torres concluded, taught us to become something much worse. Keth 9's communication systems crackled with incoming messages from across his fleet. His ship commanders were reporting the same thing. Human vessels were appearing everywhere, using technology that shouldn't exist, employing tactics that defied conventional military doctrine. This is impossible, he muttered. Our intelligence reports, our reconnaissance missions, everything indicated that human technology was centuries behind ours. Oh, it was, Captain Vasquez agreed cheerfully. Right up until the moment your first scout ship entered our system. You see, Admiral, nothing motivates human innovation quite like an existential threat. We've made more technological advances in the past 18 months than in the previous 50 years. Necessity is the mother of invention, General Torres quoted. And you, Admiral, provided us with a great deal of necessity. The holographic display shifted again, showing what appeared to be a human research facility. Scientists in white coats moved between workstations, covered in technology that looked like nothing in Keth 9's database. Meet Dr. Sarah Kim, General Torres said, as the image focused on a young woman with bright eyes and an excited expression. Theoretical physicist. She's the one who figured out how to reverse engineer your cloaking technology from the debris of your scout ships. Another shift, another scientist. Dr. Marcus Webb, biotechnology specialist. He's been working on organic hull plating based on samples we recovered from your weapon impacts. And another. Dr. Lisa Chang, quantum mechanics. She cracked your faster-than-light communication protocols in about 6 weeks. Apparently, your encryption methods were, and I quote, adorably primitive. Keth 9's world was tilting off its axis. Everything he'd believed about human capabilities was crumbling. You're telling me that a few human scientists managed to decode technology that took us millennia to develop? Not a few scientists, Admiral, Captain Vasquez said. Thousands of them, working around the clock, sharing information freely, collaborating across every field of study you can imagine. You see, that's another thing about being persistence predators, General Torres explained. We don't just adapt to threats, we learn from them. We improve because of them. Every challenge makes us stronger, smarter, more dangerous. And speaking of dangerous, Captain Vasquez said, her smile returning to that predatory expression. Would you like to see what Dr. Kim's team has been working on? Before Keth-9 could respond, space around his flagship began to shift. Reality seemed to bend and twist, and suddenly his ship was no longer where it had been moments before. Spatial displacement technology, Captain Vasquez explained as Keth-9's crew scrambled to understand what had happened. We borrowed the concept from your own engines, but made a few improvements. Instead of moving through space, we learned to move space itself. Keth-9 looked at his tactical display. His flagship was now sitting alone, isolated from the rest of his fleet by what appeared to be several thousand kilometers of empty space. Don't worry, General Torres said, noticing his distress. Your ship is perfectly safe. This is just a demonstration. We wanted to have a private conversation. What? What do you want? Keth-9 asked, his earlier confidence completely evaporated. To make you an offer, the general replied. Leave. Now. Take your fleet, go back to whatever rock you crawled out from under, and spread the word. Earth is off limits. And if we refuse? Captain Vasquez's smile widened. Then you get to meet our real monsters, Admiral. The holographic display went dark for a moment, then flickered back to life, showing something that made Keth-9's blood freeze in his veins. It was a human figure, but wrong. Enhanced. Modified beyond recognition. Cybernetic implants covered half its face, and its eyes glowed with an inner light that spoke of intelligence far beyond baseline human norms. Meet Commander Jake Morrison, General Torres said quietly, formerly of Earth's Colonial Marine Corps, currently of our Enhanced Human Combat Division. The Enhanced Human turned toward the camera, and when it spoke, its voice was layered with harmonics that bypassed conscious thought and went straight to the hindbrain centers that controlled fear. Admiral Keth-9 of the Vorthak Armada, it said, each word precise and terrifying. You have been evaluated as a threat to human survival. Please state your intentions regarding this system. Keth-9 found himself answering before he could stop himself. We came to conquer. To claim this system for the Vorthak Empire. Noted. Please be advised that Earth Defense Command has classified your species as hostile. You have 37 minutes to remove your forces from this system before we implement defensive protocols. Defensive protocols? Keth-9's voice cracked. The Enhanced Human's expression didn't change. Termination of all hostile forces within the Sol system using any and all available methods. This includes, but is not limited to, kinetic bombardment, quantum disruption, biological warfare, psychological manipulation, and temporal displacement. General Torres leaned back in her chair. You wanted to see what humanity was capable of, Admiral? Congratulations. You're about to find out. Keth-9 stared at the display, his mind reeling. Enhanced humans, spatial displacement, technology that could move space itself. This wasn't the primitive civilization his intelligence reports had described. This was something else entirely. How? He whispered. How is this possible? Because you taught us something very important, Admiral, Captain Vasquez said softly. You taught us that we're not alone in the universe, that there are things out there that want to hurt us, to destroy us, to enslave us. And that knowledge, General Torres continued, awakened something in humanity that had been sleeping for a very long time. The thing that made us the apex predators of our world. The thing that made us survivors when every other species like us went extinct. Our capacity for absolute, remorseless violence in defense of our pack. The Enhanced Human added, its voice carrying harmonics of death. Keth-9's hands shook as he reached for his command console. All ships, prepare for immediate withdrawal from Admiral, his tactical officer interrupted. The human ships, they're gone. Gone? Vanished, sir. All of them. It's like they were never there. Keth-9 looked at the tactical display. Empty space surrounded his fleet. No trace of the human vessels that had been surrounding them moments before. "A demonstration," General Torres said, her image still clear on the communication display. "We wanted you to understand that we could destroy your entire fleet without you ever seeing us coming. But we won't," Captain Vasquez added. "Not today. Today, you get to leave. To go home. To tell your people what you've learned." "And what have I learned?" Keth 9 asked, though he already knew the answer. "That humanity isn't prey anymore," General Torres said simply. "That we've become something else. Something you really don't want to fight." The enhanced human leaned closer to the camera. "Tell your empire, Admiral. Tell them that Earth has awakened. Tell them that we've moved beyond your ability to threaten us. Tell them that if they value their continued existence, they will find other hunting grounds. Because if you come back," Captain Vasquez said, her predatory smile returning, "next time, we won't just demonstrate our capabilities. Next time, we'll use them." The communication terminated, leaving Keth 9 staring at empty space where moments before the most terrifying conversation of his life had taken place. His communication officer's voice was small and frightened. "Admiral? Orders?" Keth 9 looked at his tactical display, at his 800 warships that suddenly seemed pitifully inadequate against an enemy that could appear and disappear at will, that could move space itself, that had turned their own weapons against them with modifications he couldn't even comprehend. "Set course for home," he said quietly. "Maximum speed." "Sir? What about the conquest?" "The Emperor expects—" "The Emperor?" Keth 9 interrupted. "We'll have to find another species to bully. This one just graduated to the top of the food chain." As his fleet turned away from the blue marble that had looked so harmless just hours before, Keth 9 couldn't shake the memory of that enhanced human's glowing eyes, or the casual way the humans had demonstrated their ability to destroy his entire force without breaking a sweat. He'd come to Earth, expecting to find prey. Instead, he'd found monsters that smiled while they showed you exactly how they planned to kill you. And, the most terrifying part? He had the distinct feeling that everything they'd shown him was just the beginning. That humanity's real capabilities were still hidden, still waiting for the right moment to be revealed. The thought made his mandibles click nervously as his ship accelerated toward the edge of the system, carrying news that would change the balance of power across the galaxy. Earth was no longer a target. Earth was now something to be avoided at all costs. Because the humans had whispered their truth, and Admiral Keth 9 had learned to listen. They really hadn't met humanity's real monsters yet. 3 months had passed since Admiral Keth 9's humiliating retreat from the Sol system, and the Emperor's throne room had never felt colder. The massive crystalline walls of the Vorthak Palace seemed to close in on him as he stood before Emperor Yash Prime, whose 12 eyes glowed with barely contained fury. "You failed me, Admiral." The Emperor's voice echoed through the chamber like grinding stone. 800 ships, 2 million soldiers, the finest fleet in Vorthak history, and you retreated from a handful of primitive bipedal creatures. "Your Imperial Majesty, with respect, they were not primitive," Keth 9 replied, his voice steady despite the fear crawling up his spine. "The intelligence reports were catastrophically wrong. The humans have technology that—" "Silence!" The Emperor's roar shook the palace foundations. "You speak of technology? From creatures who barely mastered fusion power? Who still use chemical propulsion for their space travel? That was before we arrived," Keth 9 said quietly. "Before we gave them a reason to evolve." Emperor Yash Prime's mandibles clicked in disgust. Excuses. Pathetic excuses from a coward who ran from the first sign of resistance. "I brought you their communication records," Keth 9 continued, producing a data crystal. "Listen to them yourself, Your Majesty. See what they've become." The Emperor's eyes focused on the crystal with predatory interest. "Very well, but understand this, Admiral. If these recordings do not justify your cowardice, you will feed my pets personally." The holographic display materialized in the center of the throne room, and suddenly they were back in space above Earth, watching as General Torres and Captain Vasquez demonstrated humanity's impossible capabilities. The Emperor watched in silence as space bent around Keth IX's flagship, as human ships appeared from nowhere, as enhanced soldiers spoke with voices that carried death itself. When the recording ended, the throne room was quiet, except for the distant sound of the Emperor's breathing apparatus. "Interesting," Emperor Yash Prime said finally, "but hardly insurmountable. So they learned a few tricks from your retreat. So they modified some of their primitives into better soldiers. This changes nothing. Your Majesty, I am mobilizing the Grand Fleet," the Emperor continued, ignoring Keth IX's protest. 5,000 ships, 25 million soldiers, every weapon in our arsenal. These humans will learn what happens when they embarrass the Vorthak Empire. Keth IX's blood turned to ice. "Your Majesty, I strongly advise against this course of action. The humans are not what they appear to be. There's something else now. Something dangerous." "Something dangerous?" The Emperor's laughter was like breaking glass. "Admiral, we have conquered 47 star systems. We have enslaved entire civilizations. We have turned worlds to glass and harvested their resources for the Empire. What could these upstart primates possibly do that we have not already faced and conquered?" Before Keth IX could answer, the palace's communication system activated with an incoming priority signal. "Your Imperial Majesty," came the voice of Communications Prime Vel 8. "We are receiving a transmission from the human system. They are requesting an audience with you personally." The Emperor's eyes blazed with amusement. "How delightfully presumptuous. Put them through. Let us see what these creatures have to say." The holographic display shifted, revealing a new human figure. This one was older, with gray hair and weathered features that spoke of decades spent making difficult decisions. He wore a simple black uniform, with no decorations save for a small pin depicting Earth. "Emperor Yash Prime of the Vorthak Empire," the human said, his voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. "I am Director Nathan Cross of Earth's Strategic Defense Initiative. We need to talk." The Emperor's mandibles clicked with barely contained mirth. "Oh, this should be entertaining. The prey wishes to negotiate with the predator. Very well, Director Cross. You have 30 seconds to amuse me before I order your world burned to ash." Director Cross's expression didn't change. 3 months ago, your Admiral learned something important about humanity. Unfortunately, it seems the lesson didn't take. So, we're going to try a different approach to education. "And what approach is that?" the Emperor asked mockingly. "A demonstration," Cross replied. "But first, let me ask you something. Do you know what happens to apex predators when their environment changes? When new competitors enter their territory? They adapt or they die," the Emperor answered, though something in his tone suggested he wasn't entirely comfortable with where this conversation was heading. "Exactly. But here's the thing about humans, Your Majesty. We don't just adapt to change. We create it. We control it. We weaponize it." The display shifted, showing what appeared to be deep space. Empty. Peaceful. Nothing but stars and the distant glow of nebulae. "This is the Kepler 442 system," Director Cross continued. "One of your outer territories. 3 worlds. 2 billion Vorthak citizens. Your primary shipbuilding facility for this sector of the galaxy." The Emperor's eyes narrowed. "If you harm a single Vorthak citizen, we won't," Cross interrupted. "We don't need to. You see, Your Majesty, while your Admiral was reporting his encounter with our defensive fleet, we were conducting our own intelligence operations." The display zoomed in on one of the worlds, showing massive industrial complexes, orbital stations, millions of Vorthak going about their daily lives. Impressive infrastructure, Cross commented. It must have taken decades to build all of this, centuries to reach this level of industrial capacity. Get to the point, human, the Emperor snarled. The point is perspective, Cross said calmly. You see your empire as permanent, unshakable, built to last forever. But from our point of view, it's just another ecosystem, and ecosystems can be altered. The display flickered, and suddenly the industrial world was different. The factories were dark, the orbital stations were drifting powerlessly, but the cities were intact, the population unharmed. What have you done? The Emperor whispered. Nothing permanent, Cross assured him. We've simply introduced a new variable into your ecosystem, a biological agent that feeds on the specific metals used in Vorthak technology. It's completely harmless to organic life, but it finds your machinery quite delicious. Keth, 9 stepped forward, staring at the display in horror. Impossible! No biological agent could affect our biotech systems. They're living tissue integrated with quantum processors. Yes, they are, Cross agreed, which made them particularly interesting to study. Did you know that the quantum resonance patterns in your biotech create a specific electromagnetic signature, one that can be tracked across interstellar distances? The Emperor's breathing apparatus began working faster. You're lying. No species has that level of biotechnological sophistication. No species that you've encountered before, Cross corrected. But then, you've never encountered humans before either. The display shifted again, showing a new figure. A woman in a white coat, standing in what appeared to be a vast laboratory. Behind her, creatures moved in tanks that defied easy description. Meet Dr. Amanda Foster, Cross said, xenobiologist and genetic engineer. She spent the last 3 months studying the biological samples your ships left behind during your first encounter with our system. Doctor, Foster stepped forward, her smile bright and enthusiastic. Emperor Yash Prime, such a pleasure to finally meet you. I have to say, your species' biotechnology is absolutely fascinating. The way you've integrated living tissue with quantum mechanics is really quite elegant. What have you done to our worlds? The Emperor demanded. Oh, nothing harmful, Dr. Foster replied cheerfully. I've simply introduced a modified organism that I developed based on your own biotech principles. Think of it as competitive evolution in action. The organism is designed to outcompete your technology for resources, Director Cross explained. It's faster, more efficient, and it reproduces exponentially. But it's also programmed with very specific parameters. Such as? Keth 9 asked, though he was afraid he already knew the answer. It only affects Vorthak technology, Dr. Foster said brightly. It's completely inert around any other species' equipment, and it has a built-in termination sequence that activates in exactly 72 hours unless I personally input a continuation code. The Emperor stared at the display, watching his industrial world slowly go dark as the biological agent spread through its systems. This is an act of war, he said finally. No, Director Cross replied. This is a demonstration. An act of war would be what happens if you don't withdraw your forces from human space permanently. You think you can threaten the Vorthak Empire? We have fleets across 17 systems. We have weapons that can crack planets. Yes, you do, Cross agreed. But Your Majesty, let me ask you something. How many of those weapons depend on the same biotech integration that we just demonstrated we can neutralize? The silence that followed was answer enough. You see, Dr. Foster continued, the wonderful thing about biological warfare is its scalability. This particular organism can be deployed through your own communication networks, carried by your own ships, spread through your own supply lines. It's really quite elegant from a strategic standpoint. But we're reasonable people, Cross added. We don't want to destroy your civilization. We just want you to understand your new place in the galactic ecosystem. Which is? The Emperor asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Far, far away from Earth and its allies," Cross replied simply. The display shifted once more, showing a star map of local space. Human-controlled systems were marked in blue, Vorthak territory in red. But now, there were new markers. Green systems scattered throughout the region. "These are our new allies," Cross explained. "The survivors of worlds you've conquered. The refugees from your wars. They've been very helpful in understanding Vorthak tactics and technology. They've also been quite motivated to help us develop countermeasures," Dr. Foster added. "Amazing what species can accomplish when they're working together instead of trying to dominate each other." Emperor Yash Prime looked at the map, seeing his empire suddenly surrounded by green systems. Dozens of them. Hundreds. Impossible. We destroyed those civilizations. There were no survivors. "There are always survivors, Your Majesty," Director Cross said quietly. "And survivors remember. They plan, they prepare. They wait for the right moment to strike back. We've given them that moment," Dr. Foster said. "Advanced technology, enhanced weapons, and most importantly, hope. It's amazing how effective people can be when they have hope." The Emperor's mandibles clicked frantically. "What do you want?" "Complete withdrawal from human space," Cross said. "Immediate cessation of all aggressive actions against Earth and its allies. And a formal treaty recognizing humanity's sovereignty over our chosen territories. And if I refuse?" "Then in 68 hours, when Dr. Foster's organism spreads throughout your industrial infrastructure, you'll discover what happens when an apex predator encounters something higher on the food chain." Director Cross leaned forward slightly. "You see, Your Majesty, humanity learned something important when we developed nuclear weapons. We learned that the ultimate form of warfare isn't about destroying your enemy. It's about making your enemy irrelevant. We can turn your entire technological base into an archaeological curiosity," Dr. Foster added cheerfully. "Your ships, your weapons, your communication systems, everything that makes your empire possible. All of it dependent on biotech that we can now control." "But we'd rather not," Cross continued, "because despite what you might think, humans aren't monsters. We don't enjoy causing suffering. We just refuse to be victims." The Emperor stared at the display, his 12 eyes reflecting the dying lights of his industrial world. Everything he'd built, everything his species had accomplished, suddenly seemed as fragile as paper in a hurricane. "You're bluffing," he said finally. "No species would develop such a weapon. The risk of it spreading beyond your control is carefully calculated and acceptable," Dr. Foster interrupted. "You see, that's another advantage of being persistence predators. We're very, very good at risk assessment." 67 hours, Your Majesty," Director Cross said, checking a display on his wrist. "Then your choice becomes permanent." The communication terminated, leaving Emperor Yash Prime alone with Keth 9 inches the suddenly oppressive silence of the throne room. "Admiral," the Emperor said finally, his voice hollow. "Your Majesty? Send word to all fleet commanders. Full withdrawal from human space. Immediately. And the Grand Fleet mobilization? Cancelled." The Emperor slumped in his throne, looking older than Keth 9 had ever seen him. "Draft a formal treaty, recognizing human territorial claims, full diplomatic immunity for their allies. Your Majesty, if I may ask." "Why?" Emperor Yash Prime looked at his admiral, his eyes reflecting the weight of absolute defeat. "Because, Admiral, we have just encountered a species that doesn't fight like we do. They don't seek dominance or submission. They seek irrelevance of their enemies. They don't want to rule us or destroy us. They want to make us not matter. I don't understand. They've turned our greatest strength into our greatest weakness. Our biotech, our integration of living systems with quantum mechanics, everything that made us superior to other species. They can control it all." The Emperor stood slowly, moving to the great window that looked out over his capital city. "Do you know what the most terrifying thing about this situation is, Admiral?" "No, Your Majesty. They gave us a way out. They could have simply released their biological weapon and watched our entire civilization collapse. But they didn't. They gave us a choice." Keth, 9, considered this. "Perhaps they are not as dangerous as we thought?" "No, Admiral. They are far more dangerous than we thought, because they have the power to destroy us completely, and the wisdom to offer us survival instead. That is not the behavior of prey species, or even typical predators." "Then, what is it?" Emperor Yash Prime turned back to his admiral, and in his eyes, Keth 9 saw something he had never seen before in his ruler's expression: genuine fear mixed with reluctant respect. "It's the behavior of a species that has graduated beyond the predator-prey dynamic entirely. They've become ecosystem engineers. They don't just adapt to their environment or dominate it, they redesign it according to their specifications. And we are now part of their design, a controlled element in their larger strategic picture." The Emperor moved back to his throne, settling into it with the weight of a ruler who had just learned that his empire existed only at the sufferance of creatures he'd underestimated catastrophically. "Send the withdrawal orders, Admiral. All of them." "And Admiral?" "Yes, Your Majesty?" "Make sure our diplomatic corps understands that humanity is to be treated as a Tier 1 civilization from this point forward. Full honors, full respect, full caution." As Keth 9 left the throne room to carry out his orders, he couldn't shake the memory of Director Cross's final words. Humans didn't want to rule the galaxy or destroy their enemies. They wanted something far more sophisticated and terrifying. They wanted to redesign the entire galactic balance of power so that aggressive species like the Vorthak became obsolete, not extinct, just irrelevant. And as his orders went out across the Empire, as Vorthak fleets turned away from human space and began the long journey home, Keth 9 realized that humanity had achieved something no other species in galactic history had managed. They had won a war without firing a shot. They had conquered an empire without claiming territory. They had become the apex species not through dominance, but through making dominance itself an outdated concept. The humans had whispered their truth, and the galaxy had learned to listen, because they really hadn't met humanity's real monsters yet. And now, thanks to 67 hours of very careful demonstration, they never would have to.